The visa process is complicated and confusing. It's difficult to know what to expect and to understand how to prepare. So today, I want to offer 3 tips that visa officers wish applicants knew before their interview. It's my hope that if you put these tips into practice, you will improve your chance of success at your next visa interview. I'm Travis Feuerbacher. I was a career diplomat with the U.S. State Department for almost 7 years. And for most of that time, I worked abroad as a visa officer. I've interviewed tens of thousands of visa applicants from all over the world. And now I dedicate my time as a licensed U.S. immigration attorney to helping visa applicants navigate through this complicated process. So today, let's go through 3 tips that visa officers wish you knew before your visa interview. First, it's your responsibility as the visa applicant to introduce yourself. Provide details around your unique circumstance so that the visa officer can make a conclusion whether or not to approve or deny your visa application. Now, in previous videos, I've explained that when I was a visa officer, I would routinely interview over 200 applicants a day. This is an exhausting job. And it's exhausting partially because you interview so many people, but even more than that, it's exhausting because visa officers understand that every time they make a decision, whether they approve an application or deny an application, they are dramatically impacting the life of a visa applicant. Visa officers don't always make the right decision, but they do their utmost to try to make the right decision. And the way they make their decision, at least for non-immigrant visas, which include work visas, tourist visas, student visas, is the officers will apply a law called 214B. We have a video on 214B, which I'll link to in the description below, but it essentially says that every applicant for a non-immigrant visa does not qualify and cannot obtain that visa unless they prove to the visa officer that they deserve it. In most cases, they have to prove that they can afford their trip or maybe their educational program and that they will return to their residence abroad after their trip to the United States concludes. So the officer is trying to understand several details about your circumstance. What is it that's going to compel you to return to your residence abroad after this trip? How is it that you can afford this trip or this educational program? What job are you hoping to fulfill when you get to the United States if you're going on a work visa? And every time a visa officer has to ask another question to try to get at the core of your unique circumstances, they get a little bit more exhausted and a little bit more annoyed also. So think about how you can make the officer's job easier. And you do that primarily by proactively introducing yourself, by providing those details to the officer about why you're planning to travel to the United States, how you intend to pay for this trip, and what is going to compel you to return to your residence abroad after the trip concludes. If you take a proactive approach and you volunteer these details to the officer, instead of waiting for the officer to ask multiple questions and providing one-word responses, the officer's job will be much easier and you will have a much better chance of an approval. Now, second, preparation for the visa interview is crucial. Many visa applicants assume that they're qualified for the visa, they deserve the visa, and so this is just a milestone in the process. It's a formality that they have to overcome. It's just a box to tick, and so they will show up at a consulate or an embassy with no preparation, and in many cases, that leads to a denial. Now remember, the visa officer is doing their utmost to try to understand who you are, but only in a couple of minutes because officers have to interview so many people throughout the day. So some visas require documents. Student visas, for example, require you to bring an I-20 form and maybe proof of finances, maybe transcripts from previous study. Work visas may require you to bring petition documents or contracts with an employer. If you show up without these required documents, at best, the officer will have to put your case on hold, what we call administrative processing, request additional documents or details, which delays the approval of your application and forces the officer to do more unnecessary work. Now, in other cases, if an applicant is not prepared to discuss specifically what their plans in the United States are, how they intend to pay for the trip, maybe why a degree means so much for their future, or other key details, then the officer again is going to have to ask multiple questions. They will waste their time. And if an officer has too many questions, again, that law 214B requires the officer to deny the application because the applicant has not established that they deserve the visa or that they will qualify with the visa. So preparation is key for the visa interview. Now, this is also very, very true if you've been denied before. You know, it's the definition of insanity to try the same thing and expect different results. So if you have gone in for an interview and you have not been approved, don't go back to a second or a third or a fourth interview and try the exact same thing over again. Think about a different approach to the interview process. Think about the details that maybe you weren't able to proactively surface to the visa officer last time, and then consider how you might introduce yourself in a different way so that the officer truly understands who you are. They understand your unique circumstances, and then hopefully they reach a different conclusion. Now, number 3, honesty matters. Again, in the spirit of trying to make the visa officer's job easier and ultimately making a decision to approve your application easier, remember the reason, the true underlying reason that the United States requires almost every visa applicant to appear in person for an interview is because we have determined, the United States government has determined, that a face-to-face interaction is the best possible way to determine if somebody is truthful and credible. And so think of the visa interview as an exercise in trust. If you omit a fact, even if it seems trivial, or maybe you slightly tweak a fact in your DS-160 application form, or maybe in your interview itself, even if you don't think that this is a big deal and you're just trying to make your situation seem a little bit better, or maybe you're actively trying to cover up something negative in your past, like a criminal issue or a problem in another country, chances are the visa officer already knows that negative fact about your life, and they're going to conclude that you are not trustworthy. Now, even if the visa officer doesn't have access to that specific detail and they can't put their finger on exactly what you haven't been completely truthful about, officers are pretty good at judging your character. And if they just think that there's something that doesn't seem right, again, they're required by law to deny your case. Now, in situations where applicants don't appear completely honest, completely truthful, this takes a lot more effort on the part of the visa officer to try to get at exactly what this applicant is all about. In these situations, officers have to spend more time. They may have to ask more questions. They may want to review more documents. They may even need to refer your case to a formal investigation before they can reach a decision. So again, officers wish that applicants knew that honesty was such a key component of this process. And if you assume that the visa officer already knows everything that you've been asked, and you are 100% honest and transparent in your application materials and during your interview, you will make the visa officer's job much easier, and your chance of success goes up significantly. So to recap, it is your responsibility to introduce yourself and provide the key details that your visa officer needs to ultimately decide whether or not to approve your application. preparation for the interview is crucial. You need to make sure that you bring necessary documents. You need to make sure that you're prepared to introduce yourself in detail so that the officer understands who you are and can easily decide whether or not you qualify for the visa that you're applying for. And number 3, honesty, transparency matters. You need to make sure that you are completely honest in every step of the application journey. Because if you're not, the visa officer will probably deny you, and it may lead to more severe consequences in the future. And now this is where my law firm, ZF Visa and Immigration, comes in. At ZF Visa and Immigration, we work with visa applicants to help them navigate through the visa process. We conduct mock interviews with applicants to help them understand what questions they might expect at their interview, and to help them understand which details they need to volunteer to their visa officer and how best to do so. We also work with complicated cases. If you've had several previous refusals or criminal issues, or you're stuck in lengthy administrative processing delays, reach out to us and we'll see how we can help. Visit our website at zfvisa.com or just send us an email to info@zfvisa.com and we'll work with you. Now for students, we also offer a range of online self-service student visa courses at zfvisaguides.com. We have a course that overviews exactly how to complete the DS-160 application form with as much detail and as honestly as possible. We have a course that overviews how to prepare for the student visa interview, how to explain your situation, your source of funding, your plans after graduation. And then we have a complete student visa guide that overviews the entire process, starting from the I-20 form to the DS-160, the interview, the travel to the United States, and even CPT and OPT work. And if you unlock that complete online course, you also gain access to a bi-weekly live question and answer session with either myself or my partner Mandy, both former visa officers, so you can ask any lingering student visa questions that you have. So again, visit our website at zfvisaguides.com and take a look at our courses if you're planning to study in the United States.